Hello and welcome. My name is Craig Lamolt. I'm a reporter here at WGBH Public Radio, and thank you for taking part and tuning in for our second ever Beyond the Page book club. Today, I'm joined by Hank Phillippi Ryan, author of this month's book choice, The Murder List. I'd also like to give a special shout out to Brookline Booksmith, who partnered with us on this event. While their doors are not currently open, they are doing curbside pickup every day from 10 to 4 and until 6 o'clock on Fridays and Saturdays. They're also answering their phones, so give them a call during these hours if you have any questions. Before we get started, I want to explain how this thing is going to work. I know many of you may be new to Zoom, and we're still kind of figuring it out ourselves here. The attendees to the book club today will not be able to speak. Also, we can't see you, so don't worry about what you're wearing. But we do want to hear from you. We're going to have, you can ask questions by opening the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen and typing in your question. You can also put your questions in at any point during the discussion, and you can ask really anything that you want, anything you're interested in, whether it's about Hank's writing style or how she prepared the novel or the novel itself, questions about the characters or the timeline, anything like that. Feel free to ask away. And if you see a question that you like, you can upvote it. And the questions that have lots of upvotes get moved up on the list. So please upvote other people's questions, and those will really help us kind of direct the conversation here. We're going to be using the poll feature as well here on Zoom. And we're actually going to do a little test poll right now. As you'll see, the poll will pop up in the center of your screen, and you'll be able to move this window or close the window, or you can answer the question. You don't have to answer the question, but we'd love your answers. When you answer the question, the window will disappear entirely. So our first question here is this your first Beyond the Page book club event? So go ahead and let us know if you've done this before or you're joining us for the first time. Right now, as you're answering that question, I want to introduce the team behind tonight's event. They're going to be pulling the strings and sort of connecting with you, but you won't see or hear them. They're going to be hiding in the background. Jen Gilchrist is our event producer. She's controlling what it is you're seeing on the back end. Jen, come say hello.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're so excited for our second installment of Beyond the Page, and I can't wait to hear the very exciting discussion that we're about to have.
Great, thank you. And Alicia is going to be keeping an eye on our Q&A questions box and letting you know a little bit later about how you can continue to support the efforts of WGBH in providing these virtual events. Hi, Alicia.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. We're really excited to have you all here. So when you're submitting your questions, go ahead and let us know too where you're from so we can kind of see where everybody's tuning in from. Thanks so much.
All right, as I mentioned before, we're going to be taking your questions via the Q&A function, so feel free to submit them at any time. Get those questions in there now. Stick around until the end. We're going to be announcing information on July's Beyond the Page selection, as well as a new spin-off series, Beyond the Page Young Adult Edition, which is coming shortly. So we'll tell you a little bit about that later on. But without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Hank Phillippi Ryan. She is a USA Today best-selling author of 12 mystery novels. She's won multiple prestigious awards for her crime fiction, 5 Agathas, 3 Anthonys, the Daphne, 2 Macavities, and the coveted Mary Higgins Clark Award. She's also an on-air investigative journalist for WHDH TV here in Boston. She's won 36 Emmys. I think you can actually see a bunch of those behind her on the shelf. And she's also won 14 Edward R. Murrow Awards and dozens of other honors for her groundbreaking journalism. Her newest book, as you know, is the acclaimed standalone psychological thriller, The Murder List. It's a nominee for the prestigious Mary Higgins Clark Award, the Agatha Award, and the Anthony Award. And she's got another book coming out. The next book is The First to Lie, a chilling psychological standalone coming on August 4th. I'm just can't say how excited I am to be here with you, Hank. If you would you start out by reading a little passage for us from The Murder List?
Of course, I'd love to. Thank you, Craig, and thank you, everybody at WGBH. And Brookline Booksmith, we love you. Thank you so much for all being here this evening. I was so excited about it tonight that I actually put on perfume, and then I thought, why am I doing that? So anyway, so you asked me to read a little bit from the murder list, something that was sort of emblematic of the whole book, representative of the whole book, just in about a minute. So let me read that for you. You walk through the door or you don't. Those are the only choices. I put my hand on the brass knob of the wood-framed entrance to the Middlesex County First Assistant District Attorney's Office. Small gilt letters in the smoky wire-reinforced glass announce that this is where Martha Gardner holds the key to my future. If I open it and walk into her waiting room, I won't be the same person when I come out. If I turn around and walk away, I won't be the same person either. No matter what happens, I'll be different. I suppose that's what I wanted. We all have our reasons. Jack left before I did this morning. I heard the crunch of gravel as his vintage Audi pulled out of our driveway, and I ran downstairs, barefoot, perplexed, and annoyed, and frankly hurt. His might end our marriage crack last night had been unnecessary, and I know he regretted it, but Jack's not big on apologies. We'd skirted the gardener topic since Saturday, Jack working and me studying. We talked about the Red Sox game, whether Tito's vodka was worth the price, whether the lawn mowing guy would come as promised, where to plant the geraniums. Shallow and infinitely polite, tacitly understanding that pursuing our disagreement would only lead to more disagreement. Even last night, on the eve of my first day on the job, I'd avoided that topic. I couldn't risk making Jack unhappy. How long does it take to ruin everything? One moment, one wrong decision, one mistake, one unfortunate assumption or ill-chosen word or even misunderstood gift. The dominoes fall, never to be righted. Still, when I arrived in the kitchen, wrapped in my white towel and damp for my shower, I found the note Jack left me on one of his yellow legal pads, saying early meeting and good luck. I convinced myself it was his attempt to apologize. Jack's set in his ways. I've learned how to deal with them. Now the gilt-lettered office door opens as if on its own. A harried-looking man, glasses askew on his nose and clipboard in hand, more Jack's age than mine, looks me up and down. I pull my hand away from the doorknob and take a step backward into the fluorescent-lighted entryway, as if I've just arrived, as if I hadn't been hesitating. Rachel North, you're Rachel North, correct? Behind him, there's a beige couch, empty, 2 beige stuffed chairs, empty, and a file-strewn wooden desk. I'd succumbed to the jitters of first day-itis, so I know my black heels are unscuffed and my new black suit jacket is buttoned properly. New, shorter haircut with new, even blonder highlights, ends tucked behind understated gold earrings. The cordovan leather of my not new briefcase, a welcome to the law present from Jack, is burnished enough to show I use it. But this man's scrutiny makes me second-guess myself. Not auspicious if I'm to be a convincing prosecutor in training. Correct, I try to make my voice confident. Are you? This way, he says, cutting me off, pointing his clipboard behind him. I'm Leon Colacetti, Miss Gardner's assistant. The others are already inside. I'm not late, I'm certain I'm not, so I suspect this is Leon trying to show me who's boss. Typical man. Plus, who the others will turn out to be is a more intriguing concern. We aren't provided advance intel on the list of our fellow interns, so I only know we're all law students and our stated goal is to spend the next 3 months trying to impress the hell out of the DA. It'll soon be clear enough who my competition will be. This whole role reversal is pure irony. Back in my State House days, a career that ended 6 years ago, I supervised ambitious interns of my own. Now I'm the newbie. At 36, the newbie. She's here, Leon says, announcing me. The door closes behind me.
I love it. I love it. It's so much fun having finished the book to go back and hear that introduction again. I want to ask you about that in a moment, but before I do, it is time for our second poll, everybody. And there's a key question here, which is how many people here have finished the book? Please take a second to answer the poll, because this will actually help us gauge how best to direct the discussion and if we need to have any warnings, if there's going to be any spoilers. So just take a moment, if you would, to let us know if you read the book or finished the book rather. And Hank, tell us. I mean, that's a wonderful scene. Really introduces us to these characters. Tell us why did you choose to read that to us tonight?
Well, a couple of reasons. You know, it's interesting to have to choose just a tiny bit of of a book, of an entire book, without giving anything away, but still sort of addressing the characters and letting us know who's who and letting us know what the situation is, that kind of thing. So one of the reasons I chose it is that I wanted it to be about choices. I wanted it to be about I think that a book, the key of a book, the revealing of characters, is about choices. We reveal someone's personality. We understand that by the choices that they make. And we sort of decide whether we would do the same thing. So at this moment, at this beginning, at this precipice of the book, Rachel is making a choice about the rest of her life. And again, at this point in the book, we think it's a choice about whether to take this job or not, because her husband doesn't want her to, and she wants to. And that's all we as readers really know right now. But this is, you know, what they always talk about, the beginning of a book should be a change in the character's world. Mm-hmm. And this is the inciting incident. This is Rachel's new world that we are entering, you know, on the page. We are entering this new world with her. And we know that she's iffy about it. And at this point in the book, we think, well, you know, she's a lawyer who's married, she's a law student, married to a defense attorney, working for a prosecutor, and this might be crossing a line. So again, as a choice, we see Rachel crossing a line maybe and making a decision about it. It also sets up this triangular structure of the book, which we can talk about throughout, which is Rachel and her husband, Jack, the defense attorney, and the prosecuting attorney, Martha Gardner. And on that triangle, in that triangle structure, who are the allies and who are the enemies? And what does each person want? And who do they trust? And how far will they go to get it? And so we see the whole conflict of the book is right there in those 2 or so pages. And also, I'd like to know what the poll results were, because we know, did you finish?
Okay. So 70% have finished it, but there's a good chunk of folks who have not, and 8% of folks would like us to give them a warning about spoilers. Okay, we will heed that warning, I think.
That's a deal, and I can tell you the last reason. That is a deal, and we should talk about that later, about knowing the end. But the last reason I chose that section is that when you finish the book and you go back and read that section, it will mean something more to you than it does now. I call my books sort of Trojan horse books, that you think you're reading one thing, but really tucked inside is something else that you don't find out till later.
Which makes it so much fun as the reader, because there's that moment, that epiphany, like, oh, and I mean, we'll get to this in a moment, but I mean, I wanted to just read the whole thing again, knowing what I knew at the end of the book.
I can tell you that I get emails from people, from readers, saying that that's exactly what they did, that they finished the book, thought, oh my golly, and went back and read the entire thing again. And that is a huge compliment to me, because as an author, we build in so much stuff in the book that sometimes at one reading you might not see it all, and then reading it the second time is a completely different experience, which I also love, and which readers also seem to love. So I'm thrilled about that.
Well, I want to ask you about the story structure here, because it's sort of fascinating, because you're playing with a lot of different things. First of all, you're alternating between 2 different time periods, right? We have a life in the past and a life in the present, and we're going back and forth between the two. And then also, I want to talk about perspective, because we're actually getting this from 3 different perspectives. But first, let's talk about the timeline for a second. How does that work in terms of shaping the story? Why tell it in that way? What were your thoughts as you sort of structured going back and forth between two different time periods? And then we're going back and forth, but then we have a whole chunk of the past and then a whole chunk of the present. You really kind of, it's inconsistent, but in a not in a confusing way. It's kind of fun.
Well, thank you. And imagine how that was to write. That was quite the juggle to write. So a couple of elements of that question, sort of one at a time. One of the things about writing from three different points of view is that we're in a character's head when we're in a point of view. So you see a story from Rachel's point of view. You see what happens. You see the world from Rachel's point of view. When you're in Rachel's head, when I'm in Rachel's head, writing as Rachel, I know what she knows. I see what she sees. I think what she thinks, but I don't know what anyone else thinks. The same with Jack's point of view. We are Jack. When we read those sections, when I write those sections, I am Jack. I'm sitting here in this chair, this very chair, being Jack, writing what he thinks, almost channeling Jack, almost channeling Martha. So as the reader, as the author, I know what Martha thinks, I know what Jack thinks, I know what Rachel thinks. As the author, I also know what really happened, but I can only assign what each character knows to them. Also, so much of it is about perception. In a human interaction, I may say something to you and you may decide it means one thing when I actually mean something else. But because not Craig, but one you, because the person got it wrong, they make decisions based on that mistake. And that's what drives a book as well. So throughout the murder list, people are doing the best they can and going after what they want. That's what every author says. That's what I say to myself. What does this character want? And how far will they go to get it? And also, how will they shape their actions to get what they want? And who might they use and trample and manipulate and deceive in order to do that? The other thing about what you were asking, which is the end, which I don't know. Oh, the back. Let me do the
timeline, right? So there's the perspective issue, but you're also playing with time.
One of the things that I learned from author Elizabeth George is that backstory is death. That's what she says as a writer. When you read a book and the author starts to say, but when she was 10 and she lost her dog and Timmy fell into the well and her mother never understood her and all this sort of stuff, and it's past and it's over, and you think, yeah, just let me get to the story. So, but in order to fully let the reader know who it is we're talking to and what their motivations are and sort of why they do what they do, you have to have that backstory. People have to have a history. Every character has to be a real person that had something happen to them before the book. They had lives before the book. So what I decided to do by having a now section and a before section is to have, and forgive me if this sounds really crazy, but it's a writer thing. The before is the now of then. So it is, I know. So
yeah, it's crazy. It is.
I mean, what is happening right now to the character? But it's earlier to the reader, but it's now to the character. So
Sure.
they're going to make those decisions in that time period based on who they are then. Not second guessing, not foreshadowing. Nothing is foreshadowing in the book because they don't know. They don't know what their lives will be. Just like in real life, we don't know what our lives will be. So as an author, I decided to take you to a different now, if I can say that, take you to a different now and show you what shaped these people's perceptions and what happened to them in the past. And of course, because this is a thriller, because the murder list is a thriller, some of those things are, some of those things are clues. And as the book evolves and as you learn more about Jack and Martha and Rachel, and we don't go back to Martha till much later, you learn more about Jack and Rachel and who's in their lives and what drives them, that helps you read the now. And it also lets you know something that helps you understand them. So you should see I have all these notepads of timelines, with crisscrosses and calendars and lines that squiggle together, and I mean actual calendars and date lines and how old somebody would have been and where they would have been and all that sort of stuff. That's all that structure that's invisible in the book, that feels seamless, but it was hair-pullingly difficult, I have to say.
Yeah, nothing, it doesn't seem like this would be an easy book to write, but it is an easy book to read and a thoroughly enjoyable one. One of the things in the perspective that was interesting to me is that it's almost entirely in the third person, sort of that omniscient third person narrator, with the exception of Rachel. She's the one character who we get into her head. And I think, again, without revealing any spoilers, that I think that in the end of the book, we sort of come to understand why, that her perspective, her inner voice is important for us as the reader to hear.
I mean, it's interesting because there is Rachel's point of view that where we hear it, we're in her head, but we're only in three heads. We don't know what, for instance, the reporter Clea Rourke is thinking. We don't know what Senator Rafferty is thinking. We don't know what Nina Rafferty is thinking. We're not in their heads at all. We are never in their points of view. We only hear and see them and understand them through Jack's head, Martha's head, Rachel's head. No other points of view, just those three. So for instance, the reporter, Clea Rourke, people have said to me, oh, you must not like reporters because she's pretty awful. And I say, clearly I love reporters. And secondly, we don't know what Clea really is like. We know what Rachel thinks of her, what Rachel tells us. We know what Jack tells us. We know what Martha tells us, but we never hear from Clea. So we as the readers have to put together all those puzzle pieces to see what really might be true. And that was really fun to do as well.
The other moment that was kind of like that there is a moment where they're in a state trooper vehicle and they're in the back, and Rachel's really annoyed because NPR is on the radio. And it's set in Boston too, so I won't ask what station she's listening to, but she was not happy about that. I was trying to find that page, but I didn't.
I'll have that changed in the ebook version.
She should be delighted to be hearing public radio, but but then again, we're hearing her perspective, not mine. That's the important thing. I want to just remind people out there that you can ask questions. Just open the Q&A tab in the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to some of your questions in just a moment. And also, you can upvote other people's questions if you see a question that you'd like an answer to. So please remember to go in there, and we really want to hear from you, and that's going to be part of the conversation. Real quick, though, I want to ask you about justice, because it seems to me, you're talking about perspective. This is this is largely a book about a search for justice, but by the end of the book, I feel like we've come to realize that means something different to each of your main characters, right?
I love it when people really get the book. You just keep talking, Craig. I love it. I'm just going to drink this in. Yes, and I can tell you really quickly where the idea of the book came from. And it is exactly about justice. My husband is a criminal defense attorney here in Boston, and he's wonderful and benevolent and the best of guys. So we were at I've wired myself with hidden cameras as my career, confronted corrupt politicians, gone undercover and in disguise. But I got the idea for the murder list at the breakfast table. Seriously, it was one morning, and Jonathan and I were having breakfast, and he was telling me about a particularly grisly murder case where he was defending the person who was charged with this murder. And he was telling me, the evidence, listing the evidence and telling the story about it. And I, with one track of my brain, how you listen to people with one track and then you have another track where you're thinking. With one track of my brain, I was listening to what he was saying and thinking it was an interesting story and wondering how he would present it to the jury. And with the other track of my brain, I was thinking, what a good guy my husband is. You know, he's protecting the rights of the individual. He's standing up for the little guy. He's making sure that this defendant isn't pummeled by the power of the prosecution. You know, he's really a good guy, standing up for the little guy. Guilty, you know, that somebody is innocent till proven guilty. And that's what a good guy he is. And then I started thinking about the prosecutor's wife, saying the prosecutor was a man. The prosecutor's wife on the other side of town, and he was telling her exactly the same story from the prosecution's point of view. And was she thinking, what a good guy my husband is. He's standing up for law and order. He's protecting the rights of all of us. He's protecting the citizens. He's keeping criminals off the streets and bad guys and miscreants from harming other people. What a good guy he is. And then I thought, that's exactly the same case told from two completely different sides, but each side, the prosecution and the defense, each side thinks they're the good guy, but there can only be one truth. And how do we, as citizens, as people who I hope will be on juries, how do we come to decide what justice means and how we get there and what is truth? And there's the story that my husband would weave, and there's the story that the prosecutor would weave. And is either of those totally true, or is there a third story? And that kind of search for truth and justice. And I know it sounds sort of highfalutin, and I don't really mean to. And The Murder List is a thriller, a fast page-turning thriller.
It is.
But underneath, you know, just as I do when I'm a reporter, I want to change the world a little bit when I write a story for television. And I want to change the world a little bit when I write a novel. I want you to think of the world and our responsibilities, especially when it comes to the justice system, in a different way. And that maybe if you're on a jury someday soon, and you have been through this novel and you have seen what it's like and understood justice a little bit, that maybe, you know, you think about that a little bit, and you think about good guys, and you think about what that means, and how one person, I mean, the people who read the book, this isn't a spoiler in any way, I mean, Rachel wants to go back to work. She doesn't want to be on this jury. She wants to leave. And she's decided that she's essentially more important than justice in this case. But then she learns something by being on that jury, doesn't she? She changes her life from that.
Yeah, she absolutely does. We have some fantastic audience questions, and I'm going to get to them in just a quick moment, but we're going to take a quick break right now to hear from Alicia and how you, the viewers out there, can continue to support WGBH's efforts, not only with Beyond the Page, but all the virtual events that we offer here. And again, don't forget that we want to hear more questions from you. We're going to turn our attention to some of those questions in just a moment. But Alicia, welcome.
Hey, I'm having such a great time listening to the conversation, and I'm taking notes, and I wrote down the before is the now of that. It's going to take me a little while to go through that, but I just wanted to say that we're so glad that all of you are here and enjoying this conversation with Hank, and we're able to bring these conversations with you and the entertaining programs that we do on WGBH because of your support, especially during these unknown times when we're all kind of social distancing. We're here engaging and having some great meaningful conversation. So if you would like to take a minute and support us, you can do that by going to WGBH.org/support events. And we're going to make it super easy for you because we're going to put the link in the chat so you can go ahead and support. But wait, there's more. Hank has been super generous. And tonight, anyone who, as a result of the event, becomes a sustaining member of WGBH will receive an autographed advance copy of Hank's next book, The First to Lie. Now, these are really special advanced editions. The public doesn't get them until August 4th. So you might want to take advantage of that. So check it out, WGBH.org/support events. I have more notes to take. So Craig, let's get back to it.
All right. Thank you so much, Alicia. And Hank, I want to hear more about your upcoming book. That's very exciting. Congratulations. But before we turn our attention to a whole other book, we have some fantastic questions about this book. And the first one here I want to ask is one that I found myself wondering about reading the entire book. I mean, your experience in Boston as a journalist for many years, and just hearing about your husband's work in the courtroom as well. The question is from Randy Werner from Andover, asks, were any of the characters in this book influenced by people you've met in real life?
That's such a great question, Randy. Thank you. And the answer is strange, and I wonder if you'll be surprised by it. Certainly, I mean, I've been a television reporter for 43 years. I know that's so crazy, and I've met a lot of people and gone a lot of places, of course, and had a lot of experiences that many people wouldn't have. But when it comes to writing a novel, for me at least, there's no one in my book who is anyone. It's not, oh, I'm going to take this person and make him or her be that person with just a different name. Certainly a novel and characters in a novel are an amalgam of experiences and gestures and dialogue and snippets from real life. How could that not be? That's what a novel is sort of creating a new world, a completely new world with all the puzzle pieces that each author has. But if you think you recognize someone in one of my novels, you really don't. I mean, that is, if you think that somebody is a real person, that's because those are the people that you know. And you think, oh, I wonder if that's, pick a person, X, Y, and Z. But I can tell you that it's not. My stories and legal cases that I've been involved in, little tendrils, little elements, little snippets but they get woven together into a new, I don't know, tapestry, a Rubik's Cube. It's like if you start with a Rubik's Cube of things and you just click it around and it, polish and tweak and change, and then suddenly, ping, you've finished, a side is just all blue and you think, oh, that's my story. So that is the world's longest answer to the real answer, which is no, they're not anybody. They're not.
But you kind of put us in deeply in two different worlds, the State House and the courthouse. Did you research those specifically for this book, or is it just from your experience reporting all these years?
Yes, I mean, that's from experience. How many hundreds and hundreds of times have I been in the courthouse, and I know what the doors sound like, and I know how hard those benches are, and I know how slow the elevators are. And in the State House, those corridors and the long, long halls and the gorgeous columns I did look up what the names of the ships on the Senate President's door were to make sure that I had that right. But that I don't, sometimes I'll look up a very specific thing to make sure I get it right. But generally that's just what I know, what that feels like. I have been there. I have walked those halls. So, and that's the thing, I didn't start writing till I was 55, which was 15 years ago. And I wouldn't have been able to write my books if I hadn't had those years of experience. Me being who I am now, at this age, was what allowed me to create the books that I do now. I couldn't have done it before. People say, do you do a lot of research for your novels? And I say, I've been researching for 40 years. I just should have written it down more. I don't know. I should have taken better notes about it.
That's actually, it's amazing to hear that it was that late in your career that you started writing fiction. I didn't realize that. And actually, I find some encouragement in that too, because, that means maybe there is hope for me. Maybe there is a novel in me someday. I find the prospect of writing fiction really intimidating. It seems like, I don't know, it just seems like a whole different thing. And I wonder, was it a tough switch to jump to coming up with the stories yourself rather than thoroughly researching them?
If I say no, here's what was interesting about it. I have written a story for television, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories for television. They have a beginning, middle, and an end. They have a character who you care about, a problem that needs to be solved. You want the good guys to win and the bad guys to get what's coming to them. And in the end, as we said, you want some justice. So that is just the same as writing a novel. shorter, but it's the same as writing a novel, except the thing that I worried about in writing fiction was whether I could make stuff up. Because the thing that is so different about a novel is that I'm going to say this and you're going to think, well, yeah, it's fiction. And so it's a whole new world. There's a wonderful Stephen Sondheim musical, Sunday in the Park with George, where there's a scene where George Seurat is on stage with a blank canvas, a sketch pad, and he sketches a hat. And he says, look, I made a hat where there never was a hat. And it's a song about creativity and about imagination and about how we as human beings are the only creatures who can do that. We can make a new world, like I did with Rachel and Jack and Martha, out of nothing but my own imagination. And that's what I do every day at the computer. I'm just making hats. I'm just making new worlds for readers to share. So yeah, when I got the idea for my first novel, I remember it so clearly. I came home and I said, sweetheart, to my husband, sweetheart, I've got a great idea for a novel. I'm going to write a book. And Jonathan said, great, honey. He says, do you know how to write a novel? And I'm like, how hard can it be? You know, I've read 1 million of these. And I soon learned how hard it could be. But I was obsessed. I have to tell you, I was obsessed. I did not take a day off. I did not take a vacation day. I sat at my computer every night and every weekend. And that turned out to be Prime Time, my first novel, which won the Agatha for Best First Mystery. And that was the beginning of this new career. I mean, it's just so fabulous. It is a surprise to me as well.
That's great. And it's what a great start. And of course, you've written so many since then and are still doing it. It's really great. We have so many great questions, so I want to get to some of them. This one is a very specific one about a plot point that I like, which is this one is from this one's an anonymous attendee, but it's a good question. This person says, I never understood why the senator dropped off the necklace at Rachel's apartment. What do you think his motivation was? That's a tough one.
He tells her, and it's true. Remember, there was someone else in the car, and that someone else is his wife, and he had the necklace in his pocket and he didn't want her to see it.
Yeah, but do we believe her? I don't know if I believed that. That's
true. I mean, that's the thing. That's true. And that's the cool part, is that he sees her as a factotum, as an assistant, as an aide. You know, she's fine. He's right there. Oh my goodness. It's a good excuse for his wife. I need to go give Rachel some papers. That's why he brings her a blank envelope or whatever it is, a blank file, like an empty envelope. So he just has this and he needs an excuse because he's kind of duplicitous, but he loves his wife at that point and he has a necklace for her. And if he goes home, she'll find it. And so he just takes it to her. But Rachel, who, I'm careful of the 12% here, lives in her own reality. And she creates a story about that. And that's one of the scenes where you see the real Rachel, if you're looking for it. Just that tiny, meaningless, one little, you know, when you heard in the opening of how long does it take to ruin your life, one misunderstood gift. And that's what that refers to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was the fact that the necklace makes another appearance that made me question his story.
Yep, you're supposed to. That's because it's a thriller.
That's because it's a thriller.
Yeah, okay. because of course there are going to be red herrings in a book.
Yeah.
And I understand what thriller readers are trying to do. They're trying to figure out the story. So my job as a good writer is to say, put out things that may be something, and that any good thriller reader like you are, and like whoever asked that question, Anonymous, are going to say, oh, that's a thing. I mean, when I watch television with my husband, and I'll say, oh, someone's going to drown. And Jonathan says, why would you say that? And I say, because there's a river. They just wouldn't put a river in it if somebody wasn't going to drown. And he says, can't you just watch it? And I'm like, no, I can't just watch it. I have to figure it out. And that's what readers are doing. And that, readers, is what I'm doing to you. I'm putting things in the book that you're going to glom onto as a thing, which turn out to be nothing. And let me say that I don't know when I put those things in, which things are going to turn out to matter and which things are not going to matter, because I don't know what the ending is when I'm writing the book. I have no idea what's going to happen at the end, or who will get killed or not, or who the bad guy is or not. I have no idea. So I'm finding out with you in the book. So I write, you know, the next line and the next paragraph and the next scene, and that's what gets me to the computer every day. It's like, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder what's going to happen. And the only way that I can find out is to write that. So people say to me, wow, at the end of the murder list, you really surprised me. And I say, yeah, was it? Me too. You know, wasn't that a surprise?
But it seems so deliberate when I think back at all the other things that led up to that. It's like, oh, she was sort of like leading us along. I mean, you really didn't know how it was going to end. It's amazing to me that you didn't know how it was going to end, because it seems like you crafted it to that perfectly. And
can I just write you? I crafted it perfectly. Thank you.
Did.
I mean,
how did you not know that was going to happen? Because there's all these lines that sort of in hindsight, you're like, oh, right, you know?
Because in hindsight, you read them as that now. I do have the piece of paper, and it's somewhere on this desk, which if you saw, you would think, oh my goodness, how does she get anything done? This is the clean part. There's a piece of paper on this desk that says, did Rachel kill Danielle? And that is, I saved that because I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. No. But it just shows what can happen in a novel, because you try everything. Did Jack kill Danielle? Did Senator Rafferty kill Danielle? Did Nina kill Danielle? You know, who are, you know, which people are you going to pick to, I mean, so even that was a possibility. There's a wonderful, there's a book by Sally Field, which I can't remember the name of her biography, which you will know, but now my mind is blanking. But when I heard her talk about it, she talks about playing to the end, and how when an actor knows what the end of a story is, they can't help but at the beginning acting to that end, going to that end. And that's why, just like when I'm out searching for a story in my journalism, I'm searching for the story in my novels. And so just like the readers, I'm waiting to see what's going to happen. So I know when I begin that it could have been Dan, it could have been Jack, it could have been Martha, it could have been one of those interns, it could have been the senator, it could have been, what if it was really Clea? You know, in a world where things can happen, any of those things could happen.
And it's not just the things that happen that are kind of tricky when you're kind of making us not quite sure what's going on at moments deliberately. The characters are sometimes the same way. We have a great question from someone on the chat saying your characters are complex and it's hard to decide whether you like them or not. Do you intend them for them to be hard to get a purchase on? I thought it was a great question, because I had that feeling as I was reading as well. Do I like these people?
Yeah, likability. You know, that's an interesting concept that we talk about a lot in writing world. I don't think a character has to be likable. I think a character has to be interesting and compelling and fascinating and intriguing. You know, my books are about manipulation and deception and gaslighting. There's no graphic violence, there's no graphic sex, there's no inappropriate language, but there is intrigue, there is manipulation, there is psychological mind games. And so the key of these books is to keep the reader guessing about what people's motives really are. And if someone is an adorable, I mean, we don't really like Hannibal Lecter, you know, that we don't really like either of the people in Gone Girl, but man, those people are fascinating. So what I try to do is write characters like real people who we care about what happens to them, because we're curious about what happens to them. And just like in real life, we might think we like someone, then they make a decision and we think, wow, why did they do that? And we sort of pull back a little bit on them. And we can never know the real person. So I don't think about, is my character likable? I think some of them certainly are, and some of them certainly aren't, and some of them certainly are sometimes and aren't other times, but I have to tell you, that's not my goal, to make them likable. My goal is to make them interesting, and who you root for in the murder list is not the person who you think you're going to root for. Think about who the real person who's the winner in this book is, and what it is that that person was going for. And when we talk about justice, that was served in the book, but not in the way, I hope, that you predicted, that anyone predicted.
You know, in the search of justice, I mean, we have a legal system that's based on rules, but it seems like every single character in some way bends those rules, you know, in one way or another. I mean, even like the bailiff or you know, the police officer there who's listening in. You know, everybody's sort of kind of bending the rules a little bit, or just outright breaking them. And I guess I wondered if, as I was reading it, is this what it's really like? Is this your observation from all your time reporting in this scene, that are people really kind of just doing their own thing, or is this a device being used for dramatic effect here?
No, it's all true. I mean, you know, that sounds so silly, but
Really,
I've had many lawyers write to me and say, how did you get this so right? I've had people say to me, are the prosecution and defense attorneys really at loggerheads with each other like that? And I think, yeah, they completely are. Are bailiffs telling one lawyer or the other lawyer what's happening in the jury room? Sometimes, maybe not deliberately. You know, maybe somebody walks out of a jury room and goes, yeah, to somebody, or I don't know, or people are human and people choose sides. And that's what's so fascinating about it. Our justice system is the best system that we could possibly have, but it's made up of humans. And especially from the lawyer standpoint, the winning is the thing. Winning is the thing. And when you talk about bending the rules, I don't see it so much as bending the rules necessarily, as I see it as choosing the rules that work best for your case and focusing on those rules and not the other rules, where the other side may be choosing the other rules to use. And that's why there's objections, and that's why there's bench conferences, and that's why there are judges to make decisions about which of those tactics, which of those arguments is going to prevail. And that's fascinating, isn't it? Because depending on whose side you're on, you root for one side or the other to win. And that's what I think is so fascinating about legal thrillers. I mean, somebody said about The Murder List, if John Grisham and Lisa Scottolini had a book baby, The Murder List would be it. And I think that's so perfect, because it is partly a legal thriller, but it's partly a psychological suspense. So it's about the rules of law, but it's also about the rules and methods of how we deal with each other. And again, how we get what we want.
Yeah, another question here that I love, this from someone who's just started reading the book this week and says it's already captivating, asks, can you tell us how long it took to write it? Which yes, that's a great question.
Yes, it is a great question.
Polish these things off, or do you work on them for years?
Yeah.
Are you working on multiple books?
One of the things I love is when people say, wow, you really churned out another book. And I think, oh my golly, there is no churning about this. You know, it takes, the answer to your question specifically is, it takes a year to write it, because that's how long I have. My contract says I'm turning in my next book on August the 14th, and no matter what happens, that is what's going to happen. So as a reporter, again, I've learned about deadlines, and I know.
Yeah, but that's a pretty big deadline. I can turn in a story on time, but a whole book, I can only imagine the pressure. I know how much pressure I'm under to do just a story. That must be
Well, it's a different thing, Craig, because I agree. You know, I know how you're feeling about being a reporter, and I have that same deadline pressure as a reporter too. But writing a novel is kind of a different metabolism, because there are some days that I'm writing my book and I'm doing my 1,000 words a day, and I think, wow, this is kind of good. This is okay. This is kind of good. And then the next day, I'll think, this is the worst thing that anyone has ever written in their entire life. This is embarrassing. No one will ever see this. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible writer. And then the next day I go back and I look at it and I think, okay, well, that was kind of okay. I can fix that. And that's the key that we don't have necessarily as a day of reporter, where we have to put a story on that day. Writing a novel, there is some glorious and precious editing time. And that is my favorite thing. So when you talk about how you can't believe that I didn't know the ending. I didn't know the ending as I was writing it. But when I went back and edited it, then I can pull on the threads that work and sort of snip the threads that don't work. And it's like taking away, when I'm in editing, it's like taking away everything that isn't the story. And you wind up with this gorgeous thing, excuse me, but I love it, this gorgeous thing that's the book that you meant to write. And where did that come from? And so on the days when I think I stink, this is the worst thing that's ever been typed in anybody's existence, then there's the day when I type the end and I burst into tears, because I don't type the end until my final draft, the one I'm going to send. And the one that you're going to read. And I have these tears of sort of, this is the best this can be. This surprises even me, not just the story, but the idea that, that I could write a book that's in a library and in Brookline Booksmith, and that you all are reading, is really quite powerful and profound to me. So, but in the short answer, it takes a year. That's a year.
Oh my God. Wow. All right. I don't know, maybe I can't ever do this. I don't know. It sounds really hard.
One page at a time. And
it sounds so hard, Hank.
You know what? You can't think of it as writing a book. And any of you out there who are thinking of writing a book, thinking of writing a book is a very intimidating thing. It's a very daunting thing. Oh my golly, 100,000 words. But if you wrote one page a day, 250 words, you do that every day, Craig. One page a day for a year, you're done, right? You'd be done. How hard is that? You could do that. So go do that.
if you compiled all the things I read over a year, it wouldn't have quite the same effect, I think. It's this.
You don't have the same goal.
But all right, maybe it'll happen someday. I love this question from Arnie Pollinger, who says, were you at all concerned about making lawyers seem even more untrustworthy than many people already think they are? Actually, that's from Robin from Holliston, actually.
Oh, Robin. So see, Robin, he tried to foist that on you, Arnie. I'm married to a lawyer. I love lawyers. I think what lawyers do, the good guy lawyers, is the most important thing that possibly could be done. I mean, they do protect the little guy. They do protect the innocent, and prosecutors do the best they can to keep criminals off the streets. I mean, I'm saying that, it's law and order. We need people to follow the rules. We need that sort of consent to make civilization work. But no, this isn't an anti-lawyer book. I mean, there are 3 different lawyers, Rachel, Jack, and Martha, in this book, the key lawyers. And you understand when you read the book why they do what they do and what their goals are. So kind of, and in the end, I kind of want you to understand lawyers, how everything is gray, everything is possible. The world changes. People can fool you. People can lie. You can misperceive something, and it falls to the lawyers to help us sort that out in order to lurch towards some sort of what we hope is justice. So I think, a good lawyer is, a valiant warrior for justice. And it all depends on which side of a case that you're on. So, No, my hope was to show you inside the legal system, to take you to a place that you may not have been before and have you come out understanding how it works, for better or for worse, for better or for worse.
We have actually only a few minutes left here, so I'm going to try. We're going to attempt to get through as many questions as we can.
Okay.
So this is going to be lightning round. Here we go. And I love this one. Why does this is from Anne asks, why does Danielle have such a vague background? Why does she not have a family that cares she was murdered? We never kind of get an explanation for that.
Can I just say she doesn't? We don't need to know that. We don't need to know. I mean, I think and remember, this is 2 books ago. I've written a whole nother book and I'm in the midst of another one. But I seem to remember that I completely say she has no family. She may have moved from someplace far away. Forgive me, I kind of forget how I set it up. But I set her up to be separate because a victim is a really important person in a book. A victim is not somebody who you just sort of kill and get rid of, because that's a big deal to kill a real person. I mean, that's the highest stakes that there possibly could be. So as a human being, if I have a whole family of people who cared about her, I would have to deal with that. And this is sort of clinical. So if I make her separate, there's sort of less of that I, as an author, emotionally have to deal with, and less that that's not the way I wanted the story to go, is Danielle's sad family. I'm pushing the story another way.
Mm-hmm. I realize these questions are way too good for like lightning round style.
Okay, well, so
they all take too much time to answer. So maybe we'll we'll give up on that part of it. But Jean says that she, as a Boston resident, she loves all the local details. Specifically, she mentioned Tremont and Boylston Streets. And did you spend a lot of time there? And I felt the same way. I mean, I live not far from where the pizza murder happened. For you, what's it like to write about these local places, and how often do you write? You set your stuff here in the Boston area?
Always. I mean, always. I know Boston, I know Brookline, I know Newton.
Could you ever write a book about another city?
I've thought about it, but every time I sort of come back to here, I mean, the number 9 park where which is cleverly disguised as something else like that, where the outside air conditioner drips on the sidewalk, it condenses on the sidewalk and plops onto the sidewalk and it falls on your head. I mean, that's something those kinds of things you can't really make up. The bandstand, on the Common, and all of the coffee shops, and how Boston drivers are, and all the different neighborhoods. And, you could endlessly write about every different part of Boston and it would feel new and different. What I do, though, is when something bad happens, I sort of open up Boston geography and put in a new place. Because I don't want people to call me and say, that was my house where that guy got killed. How could you do that? So, and I don't want a hotel to call me and say, we wouldn't food poison someone in our hotel. So there are things that I make up, and obviously streets that are made up.
Yeah, actually, I did go to Google Maps and look for the house in Auburndale, and that street does not exist in Auburndale. And then I felt actually really good when at the end of the book you said, sharp listeners will notice that some things have been changed. I was like, I'm a sharp listener. All right, great.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess probably murders in particular. One thing about the pizza murder, you mentioned that you don't have a lot of violence in your books, and that is so true. We don't even know how this person, that's a mystery throughout. We never find out really in any of these cases what the cause of death is. I guess we kind of know in Danny's case.
This is what I was saying about being a Trojan horse book, that you as a reader think that this is going to be a book about the pizza murder. And it is not. It is not a book about the pizza murder. But you're invested in that pizza murder. But what you really know later is what's really going on in that scene. What is Rachel really thinking in that scene? What's she when you go back and think and listen to her questions, what's she really asking there? What does Jack really ask about that? What does Martha really do about that? It's not a book of, this isn't a spoiler at all. It's not a book about the pizza murder, but it's a book about Rachel and Jack and Martha and how they handle situations. I love that. I think it's great. I was so pleased with the whole thing. If I can say that, am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, you certainly can. I think we have just time for just one more question here, and then actually, we have a lot more questions. Could you possibly answer some of them in our Facebook group after
Oh,
the fact?
absolutely. I will go right to the Facebook page and answer them whatever you like.
All right, great.
I would adore to do that, and I hope you'll find me on Facebook and find my website, hankphillippiryan.com. You can click on contact, it comes right to me. You can get my newsletter for all kinds of free stuff and giveaways and prizes, hankphillippiryan.com. No matter how you spell it, it'll pop up.
All right,
So
great.
I'd love to see you on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and on my website.
One last listener or viewer question here from Pat asks, are you going to use these characters again, Martha or Jack? Are they going to show up in another book? It's described as a standalone, I think, but you know, they're great characters.
This book is a standalone. The Murder List is a standalone. The First to Lie is a standalone. And that means this is the only time you will ever see these characters. This is the biggest thing, this story is the biggest thing that ever happened in these characters' lives. Unlike in a series where you know Jack Reacher isn't going to get killed because he has to come back for book 16. So the key for the author is to write suspense that's not about the main character, the series character's mortality, right? Because that main character has got to come back for the next book. But in a standalone, like The Murder List and like The First to Lie and like my book, Trust Me, anything could happen. Anything. Anybody could be good, anybody could be bad, anybody can be lying, anybody can tell the truth, and anyone could die. And that is the power of a standalone. And you as a reader, Pat, and everyone understands that there are no expectations when you open the pages of a standalone, because anything could happen. And when I realized that power, that was one of the most fun things about writing the book.
So it's important that the reader know that they are reading a standalone, because it creates that sense of uncertainty for us.
Yes, and it's very clear on these books that it's a standalone. On some of my other books, it says a Jane Ryland novel or a Charlotte McNally novel. That's part of a series, and they'll say book one. In the inside of the cover, it says standalone novels. So it's pretty clear that you'll never see these poor people again.
Okay. All right. Well, once again, I want to thank, first of all, everybody out there for so much for tuning in to our second ever Beyond the Page Book Club. This is a new thing we're trying out here, and we're so glad that you're here with us to experiment with it and to have this kind of a conversation. This has been wonderful, and special thanks to Hank Phillippi Ryan, not only for joining us tonight, but for writing this amazing book that really had us guessing to the end. It was fantastic. And for all of the mystery and thriller fans out there, Hank's next novel, as we mentioned, The First to Lie, is going to be released on August 4th. It's coming up soon. And actually, I think we said you can get an advance copy if, I think we'll hear more about that in a minute. But if you make a donation to WGBH, and thank you for that. The new book, Publishers Weekly Star says it's stellar, and that Ryan could win a 6th AGA for this one. And I don't doubt it. Thank you so much. This is just an absolute pleasure, both reading the book and having the chance to have a conversation with you about it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Me too. I absolutely loved it. Thank you all for coming.
Bye.
Just a joy.
And now I'm sure you're all eager to know what our next book is next month. Join us over the coming weeks. We're going to dive into a novel by Francesca Monplaisir, I think I'm saying that right, entitled My Mother's House, which Kirkus reviews as a shockingly original exploration of class, race, and systemic violence. An interesting time for a book and a conversation. The virtual conversation is going to be hosted by Tina Martin, my good friend. Will take place on Wednesday, July 15th at 7 p.m. You can register for this at wgbh.org/events. Don't forget to join our Beyond the Page Facebook group for more discussion topics. And as Hank said, she's actually going to be answering your questions on Facebook that we didn't have a chance to get to tonight. Sorry, we ran out of time. There's lots of great things to talk about here. We'll also, in the month of July, be launching our first ever Beyond the Page young adult edition, not adult books, young adult books, important clarification. We're going to be talking about the novel All Your Twisted Secrets by Diana Urban. You can learn more about that also at wgbh.org/events. And now Alicia is going to join us for a quick message. Hey, Alicia.
Hey, I'm reading through these questions, and I have so many things that I want to hear. I'll be joining you all over on the Facebook group as well. Hank is just amazing. And, you know, it's conversations like these that are really kind of important to my day-to-day life while we're in quarantine and we're social distancing, but really everything that we hear and watch on WGBH. But all of these things don't happen without your support, supporting the conversations we're having, supporting the great news that Craig brings us. So if you have a moment, go ahead and support your listening and watching of WGBH by going to wgbh.org/support events. And again, we're going to make it easy for you and dropping that link down in the chat. But not only that, tonight for anyone who becomes a sustaining member, but also that if you're already a sustaining member and you increase your sustaining or you give us an additional gift, then you will receive Hank Phillippi Ryan's next book, The First to Lie. And this is a great opportunity because you know, other readers will have to wait for the official release date, which is August 4th. So you're getting it way ahead of time. So this is great. Support WGBH at wgbh.org/support events. Craig, thank you so much for hosting this event. And thank you again, Hank, for doing this. This was amazing. Hope you all enjoyed your time. Back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Alicia, and thanks again to everybody for joining us. We hope you're all staying well and healthy, and you know, doing things like this to keep our minds occupied with fascinating discussions like Hank Phillippi Ryan tonight. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again here at WGBH. And thanks for supporting WGBH. Good night.